This is the true story of Nicole Lenway, a forensic expert who went from solving violent crimes to surviving one. Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where I tell true crime stories with the utmost care and respect for the victims and bearable for my community. Let's take a closer look at today's case. Nicole Lenway grew up in Minnesota and built a strong reputation as a crime scene investigator with the Minneapolis Police Department. Her colleagues respected her for being sharp, focused, and deeply committed to justice. But behind her professional success, Nicole was facing a very different reality. Her personal life was filled with fear, emotional turmoil, and a struggle she never expected to face. She first met Timothy Amaker in 2012 at the World Taekwondo Academy gym, where he worked as an instructor and was referred to as Master Amaker. He was older, more experienced, and to Nicole, that felt exciting. Tim was a man who commanded attention. He was charismatic and confident, but beneath the polished exterior was a man with a reputation. Their initial interaction was casual, and while Nicole wasn't particularly interested in him at first, Tim's charm and persistence eventually wore her down, leading to a relationship that escalated so quickly, in fact, that by early 2014, they were already living together. But what began with sweetness and attentiveness soon unraveled into something far darker. Tim's demeanor shifted. He became possessive, flirtatious with other women, and increasingly volatile, often teetering on the edge of aggression. Nicole would later recount moments of genuine fear. One especially terrifying incident where during a heated argument, Tim grabbed her by the neck and slammed her against a wall, a violent act that marked the beginning of a pattern she could no longer ignore. She knew the relationship was toxic, but like so many survivors of abuse, leaving wasn't simple. Tim had a way of manipulating her, making her question herself, and keeping her emotionally tethered. In 2015, she finally found the courage to walk away. But Tim wasn't ready to let go. During one chilling moment, he dragged her back into the house by her ponytail. By September 2015, Nicole, then 26 years old, had reached her breaking point and moved out. However, just a month after leaving, Nicole discovered she was pregnant. Tim pressured her to terminate the pregnancy. But Nicole stood firm, as she had always wanted a child, and she already felt a deep connection to the life growing inside her. On June 20th, 2016, Nicole Lenway gave birth to her son, Callahan Amaker. Though her romantic relationship with Tim had ended, she gave her son his father's last name, holding on to the hope that they might still find a way to co-parent with mutual respect and peace. But life as a single mother was anything but simple. Nicole was juggling the demands of raising a newborn while working as a crime scene investigator for the Minneapolis Police Department, a role that came with unpredictable hours, emotional strain, and the weight of witnessing trauma daily. Despite being Callahan's primary caregiver, she allowed Tim to remain involved in his son's life, hoping he would embrace fatherhood with sincerity and show up in ways that truly mattered. Unfortunately, Tim showed little interest in doing so. Instead of taking responsibility, he often handed off parenting duties to his new roommate, Colleen Larson. When Nicole moved out in 2015, Colleen had just turned 18 and moved in with Tim almost immediately. Initially described as just a roommate, it didn't take long for their relationship to turn romantic. Tim had a reputation. Friends and neighbors described him as a womanizer, someone who always had a revolving door of women in his life. One neighbor even recalled a purple porch light on his house, a kind of signal that women were welcome to come in. That detail alone spoke volumes. With Colleen now living in the home and Nicole and Tim supposedly co-parenting, it was often Colleen who stepped in to care for Callahan. At first, Nicole wasn't alarmed. She believed Colleen genuinely cared for her son and seemed to take good care of him. And if she ended up babysitting occasionally, it didn't feel like a threat. But everything shifted in the summer of 2017. That's when Nicole met Donovan Ford, a fellow officer at MPD. Their connection was immediate, and the relationship blossomed quickly. Donovan was everything Tim had never been: kind, grounded, and emotionally present. Not just with Nicole, but with Callahan too. After years of Tim's absence and indifference, Donovan's presence felt like a breath of fresh air. He treated Callahan as his own, and for the first time, Nicole felt truly supported. Tim, however, didn't take it well. Watching Nicole build a life with someone who could offer her the love and stability he never could sent Tim into a downward spiral. From 2017 to 2022, he made it his personal mission to dismantle her life, and he didn't care who got hurt in the process. Over the course of 5 years, Tim filed more than 10 reports against Nicole, accusing her and Donovan of physically and sexually abusing Callahan. These false allegations triggered multiple investigations, repeated visits from social workers, and even internal reviews at the police department. Tim harassed Donovan relentlessly, flooding him with texts and voicemails accusing him of destroying his family, but the irony was hard to ignore as it had always been Tim who abused Nicole. He'd shown little interest in his son before or after his birth, and now suddenly he was claiming ownership over the very people he tried to control and discard. Child Protection Services found no evidence of abuse. But Tim didn't stop. Eventually, he filed for custody of Callahan. Nicole, terrified of what he might do next, filed an order of protection. She feared him, and she had every reason to, but once again, in May of 2018, Tim Amaker filed a police report accusing Nicole of running over his foot with her car. He pressed charges for domestic assault, and the case went to court. But the jury saw through it almost instantly. Within minutes, Nicole was found not guilty of assault, not guilty of abuse, not guilty of anything Tim had claimed, and the judge agreed. Then, in the fall of 2020, the custody case for Callahan finally went to trial. Nicole was awarded full legal and physical custody. Tim was granted just one supervised visit per week. Nicole and Donovan continued raising Callahan together, doing their best to move forward and shield him from Tim's instability. But peace didn't last. In January of 2022, Tim's custody arrangement was modified. He was now allowed unsupervised parenting time. It was a chance to reconnect with his son, but Tim squandered it. He had just one unsupervised visit, and during that visit, he coached 5-year-old Callahan to lie to a social worker, telling him to say that Donovan was hurting him. But Callahan told the social worker that his dad had told him to lie. Tim's unsupervised privileges were revoked immediately. From then on, all visits had to take place at a legally monitored family center called FamilyWise. FamilyWise, located in Minneapolis, is designed to protect families in high-conflict situations. They offer supervised parenting services, separate entrances and exits, and even separate parking lots, so parents don't have to cross paths. It's a space built for safety. But in April of 2022, even FamilyWise couldn't protect Nicole. That evening around 6:30, Nicole parked her car in one of the designated lots and began walking toward the entrance. Inside, Tim was having a supervised visit with Callahan. But before Nicole could reach the door, someone dressed in black ran up behind her, pointed a gun, and shot her twice, once in the neck, once in the arm. Somehow, despite the shock and pain, Nicole managed to pull out her phone and dial 911. But her voice was failing. She tried to speak, tried to say she'd been shot, but no words came out.
911, what is the address of the emergency? What is the address of the emergency?
Thankfully, she wasn't alone for long. Emily Clancy, a woman driving home from dinner with friends, happened to be stopped at the intersection across from FamilyWise. She looked up and saw it happen, the shooter running up behind Nicole, firing and fleeing. Without hesitation, Emily sped through the intersection and reached Nicole just in time. She took over the 911 call, explained everything she'd witnessed, and helped Nicole into her car. Using a piece of clothing, she applied pressure to the wounds and kept Nicole calm, reassuring her that help was on the way. Emily's quick thinking saved Nicole's life.
Where's the victim? Who's shot? Who is shot? Where's the victim? We've got EMS coming right now.
When EMS arrived, Nicole was still conscious. She even walked hand in hand with first responders to the ambulance before collapsing onto the stretcher. Her injuries were severe: a perforated lung, damage to her vocal cords, and a bullet lodged between 2 ribs. The shot to her neck had missed a major artery by just 1 millimeter. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Investigators got to work immediately. In the Family Wise parking lot, they recovered 3 spent bullet casings and followed a trail of Nicole's blood that stretched from where she was shot to where she collapsed into Emily Clancy's car. While some officers worked to preserve the scene, others stepped inside the center to speak with Tim. He was informed of the shooting and, unsurprisingly, denied any involvement. After all, Tim had a confirmed alibi. He was inside Family Wise with Callahan during the attack. That fact alone seemed to rule him out. Investigators also considered 2 other possibilities. Perhaps Nicole had been the victim of a robbery gone wrong. Or, as Tim suggested, Nicole had recently worked a case that left her feeling watched.
Is she okay? She's gonna be fine?
I mean, she's stable right now, but it's really serious.
She was afraid because she thought people were driving by her house. She changed her last name to her middle name. She shut down her social media. She had drive-bys of Minneapolis coming through her house all the time. She had me bring over my shotgun to her house. She was in fear.
Investigators didn't dismiss the theory outright, but they weren't sold on it either. Just before wrapping up the interview, investigators asked Tim one final question.
This is your only car?
No, I have a Dodge Challenger too.
Tim said he actually owned 2 cars, the Jeep they'd seen and a Dodge Challenger. That detail would become very important. By the next morning, Nicole had regained consciousness. She was in rough shape, but she was able to speak with investigators, and she was clear this wasn't random. She didn't believe it was a robbery. And even though Tim had a solid alibi, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was involved. Investigators took her seriously, and soon they had evidence to back her up. Surveillance footage from Family Wise and a nearby bank captured the entire attack. The shooter's face wasn't visible, but their getaway car was a black Dodge Ram truck. That same truck appeared on multiple cameras throughout the area. It had no license plate, and the driver couldn't be identified, but investigators didn't need a plate to make a connection, because Tim Amaker owned a black Dodge truck too. Of course, he hadn't mentioned it and claimed to only own 2 cars. But now investigators knew he had a third, and it matched the shooter's getaway car exactly. Tim was brought in for questioning again. When shown still images of the truck, he admitted it was the same make and model, but insisted it wasn't his. He said his truck had Superman decals on the doors and a license plate, and the one in the footage didn't. So, according to him, it couldn't possibly be his, as if decals and plates couldn't be removed. Investigators then asked if anyone else had access to the truck, and he named his girlfriend Colleen. She was the only other person who could drive it, but he insisted she was incapable of violence, that she would never hurt Nicole. Naturally, investigators didn't take his word for it. Colleen was brought in for questioning, but she denied any involvement. She told investigators that after returning home from work on the 20th, she took a shower and remained inside for the rest of the night. But investigators weren't convinced. So they called in an FBI technology specialist, and that's when everything changed. Tim's truck was equipped with built-in Wi-Fi, meaning its location could be tracked much like a cell phone. When investigators pulled the data from the night of the shooting, the digital trail didn't lie. Investigators traced Tim's black Dodge Ram truck using its built-in Wi-Fi, and what they found was chilling. On the afternoon of April 20th, the truck left the Taekwondo studio, returned to Tim's home, and later that evening, just after 7 o'clock, headed straight to Family Wise Center. On the surface, Tim's alibi seemed airtight. He was inside the center during the shooting. But Colleen, she was the only other person with access to that truck. On April 28th, Colleen Law's son was arrested and charged with first-degree attempted murder. Their home was raided, and bullet casings found inside matched those recovered from the scene. But her arrest was just the beginning. Investigators still needed to determine how deeply Tim was involved. And it didn't take long. Surveillance footage from just hours before the shooting showed Tim driving through a KFC drive-thru in that same black Dodge Ram truck, without the Superman decals, without the license plate. It was clear Tim had altered the truck's appearance. And just like Colleen, Tim was arrested, charged with first-degree attempted murder and aiding an offender after the fact. And then came the confession. Once behind bars, Colleen came clean. She admitted that she and Tim had conspired to kill Nicole. She said Tim was the mastermind, that he convinced her Nicole was abusing their son, and that the only way to protect Callahan was to eliminate her. She also revealed that Tim had disposed of the gun after the shooting, though she didn't know exactly how. Now, both Tim Amaker and Colleen Larson were facing charges for a calculated, cold-blooded attack on Nicole Lenway, the mother of Tim's child. Tim's trial began on November 3, 2022. His defense leaned heavily on the fact that there was no direct evidence tying him to the shooting. Unlike Colleen, he hadn't pulled the trigger. There was no smoking gun in his hands, and while circumstantial cases are harder to win, they're not impossible.
Nicole took the stand.
She testified to the years of abuse, the manipulation, the fear. She spoke about Tim's motive, his capacity for violence, and the control he tried to maintain over her life.
Fear for anyone who stands in his way, as he has the unlimited capacity to cause chaos and destruction to those he deems as adversaries. I ask that the court protect not only me, my son, and my family, but all of the others that could suffer from his past and future fear.
After just over an hour of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict.
You are hereby committed to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a total of 216 months. At least 2/3 of that sentence shall be served in prison.
Guilty on all charges. Tim Amaker was convicted of aiding and abetting attempted first-degree murder and aiding an offender. At Tim's sentencing hearing, he finally spoke, and what he said was almost unbelievable. He maintained his innocence, tried to paint himself as the victim. At no point did he show remorse, no accountability, no recognition of the pain he'd caused. Tim was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the maximum allowed under the charges. A man who had orchestrated the attempted murder of his child's mother would now spend nearly 2 decades behind bars. Just 4 days later, Colleen Larson pleaded guilty, and like Tim, she showed no remorse. In fact, since the shooting, she had continued to express love and admiration for him, even though he had manipulated her into trying to take someone's life. Nicole's victim impact statement at Colleen's hearing was devastating.
April 20th, 2022, a day that will change my life forever. A day that she, without hesitation, without a second thought, wanted to end my life despite the fact that she doesn't even know me. I am a stranger to her, who happens to be the mother of the child she wanted to claim and an ex-girlfriend of a partner she wants a future with. She has admitted her intent and her eagerness to follow through with such violent and traumatizing actions that fateful day. She stood over me, which felt like only inches away, continuing in her attempts to end my life, even pursuing me after I fled from her. She has even admitted she had every intention of killing me. She was less than forthcoming, uninformative, and unhelpful in the investigation, prolonging our pain and our little sense of justice we might be able to receive in knowing the truth, the entire truth. Admitting guilt and showing remorse are two entirely different things. There has been no indication of remorse, only an admission of her actions. Given the evidence and being caught on camera, admitting guilt was essentially her only option. In her own words, she wasn't manipulated into such actions and wanted to do this on her own volition.
Colleen Larson was ultimately sentenced to 16.5 years in prison for the attempted murder of Nicole Lenway. The story of Nicki Lenway is as heartbreaking as it is chilling. She endured an ordeal that could have cost her life. But Nicki's strength and courage ensured that her story would not end in silence. Instead, her case exposed the darkest corners of manipulation, control, and abuse. It serves as a sobering reminder that sometimes the greatest threats come not from strangers, but from those closest to us. Thank you for joining me today. If Nicki's story moved you, please share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime documentaries. By remembering these stories, we can honor the victims, support the survivors, and shed light on the hidden dangers that still exist in our communities.